anything happen in WWE lately? The May 16th, 2022 edition of Raw is one of the most memorable in quite some times. Not because of any spectacular matches, moments, promos, none of that. It's because of what didn't happen on TV. I'm sure by now everyone is aware of the situation involving WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, or should I say former champions, Naomi and Sasha Banks. Between a few statements by WWE, both on air and on their website, and a steady drip of news cycling in, it's been take city on whether or not it was the right or the professional thing to do. And as you can imagine, both sides are pretty dug in. Some view Banks and Naomi as unprofessional and insubordinates, while others see them as heroes for standing up for what they believe in. I'm actually not going to completely take sides right now on this argument. On the one hand, I get it. The creative process in WWE seems like an absolute nightmare, and I'm never going to fault a talent for pushing back on poor creative. At the same time, it's hard to argue that these actions were professional. But instead of evaluating the individual merits of the decision that Sasha and Naomi made, let's examine why this happens in pro wrestling, specifically in WWE. Well, in situations like this, the issue at stake is not any individual choice. It's in fact power. Both sides are trying to exert their power, and will go to great lengths to express that power. And in a scenario like this one that we're presently seeing unfold, one side generally has all the control. As WWE said in their own statement, Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show, whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. And it's clear WWE feels that Sasha and Naomi are not fulfilling their contract, and right now they are facing the consequences. In a dispute between labor and management, it's typical for outsiders to trash labor as ungrateful for the opportunities that they have been given. And as reported by our own Wade Keller, even some of their own colleagues are not sympathetic to the plight of Sasha and Naomi. But I'm curious as to why they needed to take the action of walking out. Historically, walkouts have been used by talents to take a stand for money, creative, or fair treatment. And while some walkouts have been criticized, others have been glamorized. These glamorized walkouts have been instructive in more than one way. With the benefit of hindsight, these wrestlers appear to be vindicated based on their creative disputes. And often we come to learn that the creative friction is really the tip of the disgruntled iceberg. Regardless of the specific grievances, all of these situations shared the common thread of the talent feeling like they had no other way to address their current situation. And along with saying it was a huge mistake, Steve Austin has also commented that walking out was the only way he could get out of the situation he found himself in. In the years that have passed, these walkouts have kind of become the stuff of legend, cementing their reputations as rebels and free spirits who took a stand. And understandably so, it takes a lot of courage to do what they did. And more to the point, anytime you hear talent of yesteryear criticizing the current generation, they always seem to take issue with the contemporary crop of talent acting as passive navigators of their careers. They seem to think that if the talent just stood up to management, things would change. This sentiment comes across well-meaning, but it's definitely dated. At this point, we have almost 30 years of anecdotal evidence that tells us these wrestlers, they fulfill a predetermined role. And in the company's eyes, they are definitely replaceable. Only those that are allowed to reach the pinnacle are able to have autonomy. The Stan Hansens and Bruiser Brodys would never have been cultivated in the current climate. So when a wrestler seeks change, the only viable option appears to be walking out. And we have to question, how viable of an option is walking out really? In a system where everyone is replaceable, the loss of a single or tag team talent, it's minimized. Because again, the power is held by one entity. And let's be honest, while WWE comes across petty in their reaction, it's unfortunate that the passionate fans of these talents are unable to enjoy their art because of a front office dispute. But I just can't get over the fact that walking out is the only option for these individuals. If walking out is the only way out, then there needs to be an alternate method of addressing these grievances. WWE's classification of their workers, their monopolistic practices, and restrictive contracts make dissent a zero-sum game. You're either in or you're out. And we as the observing public need to make a choice. What do we want? Do we want wrestlers to be good soldiers and fulfill the role the company has set for them? Or do we want them to be those free-spirited rebels that blaze their own trail? And if the latter is the answer, there's only one way of doing so. That is, until things change. Talk to you next time. If you liked that video, there's more where that came from. Go ahead and check out PW Torch's newly relaunched YouTube channel. Don't forget also to follow us on all our social media channels. And most importantly, go VIP.